Good afternoon, and Merry late Christmas, I guess. This is a day after Christmas, and I found that there's a lot of people on the left that seem to completely have lost sight or never had sight of what Christmas is all about. You hear phrases like a commercial a commercial game where you're just buying a bunch of stuff. It's a retailer's holiday. And sometimes that's very true. But this Christmas, I definitely didn't see that. This Christmas, I saw people that didn't even know each other, or barely knew each other, band together while their apartment complex was burning and offering support to one another. They didn't have a whole lot to offer in way of blankets or anything material or even money to replace it. But what they did have, if their neighbor needed it, they were more than happy to offer it to their neighbor. And I thought that was beautiful. Hi, my name's Anatoly Anatolisova, and this is Patriots Must Rise. We don't always see the best sides of humanity. I had to leave my assignment because fumes from fentanyl, crack, methanol, or crystal meth being smoked was just overtaking me, and I have asthma. So this was a hard decision. I actually loved my assignment at Argyle Gardens. But it was time to leave. In less than a week, I used an entire canister of albuterol. And started on another one. So my health was at stake. But what I saw in the time that I was there was the best and the worst of people all at once. The people in transitional housing are there because they made mistakes in the past that make it hard for them to get into regular housing. They're all low income, so they don't have the income that is required for most apartments to even look at their application. Then you have criminal records to look at, all kinds of stuff getting in the way of why they are not off the streets yet. Argyle Gardens was and is a transitional housing project. Many of the reasons that somebody on the streets doesn't want to go into these projects is because of all the rules that are there, all of the rules that are enforced. Or supposed to be enforced. With TPI, it's another story. It's usually a rule for someone else. But as soon as you start enforcing that rule on me, I'm going to balk. These personality defects are part of the problem that these individuals have with reintegrating into society. And part of that's justified. Other parts are quite simply somebody on a power trip. Somebody on a power trip using security guards to enforce rules that really shouldn't be there. Well, that's all in the past. I'm not there anymore. But during the transition from me leaving TPI and finding a new assignment, I realized something. I realized that these rules that are enforced for one side of the aisle and not the other also translates into Democrat versus Republican politics. Conservatives get a bad rap, generally because the left is terrified of people realizing that they are, in fact, the party of hate. And we've talked about that before. If you dig into the basic history of the Democrat Party, you know that they are the Ku Klux Klan. They are the slave owners of the past. And there's the slave owners of today. Why do I say that? When somebody is in a position where they have to ask for help, the person giving that help is put into a position where he or she can either lord over that person and make sure that the resources given are used for what the resources were supposed to be used for. Or the person is given free rein to succeed or fail. America was founded on the idea that every person has free agency, the right to succeed or fail. Mandatory vaccine mandates during COVID all the way to the government enforced auto insurance is pure tyranny. Now, I've heard people balk at me when I say that the law enforcement forcing auto insurance is in fact an extortion. But think about it. Back in the 20s, Chicago, Frank Nitti, Al Capone's enforcer, would go into a small store with a baseball bat or a machine gun and just tear up the place. And then make a statement similar to, if you pay me this much next week, this won't happen to you again. These became known as extortion rackets. The only difference between law enforcement enforcing the insurance policy and Frank Nitti's machine gun enforcing the insurance policy is the badge. That's it. Hence, it is tyranny. We go forward as we go forward into this new year, we need to start looking at the laws that are present and how tyrannical they actually are. I do not believe in seatbelts. I know there's plenty of research, I believe it's fake, but plenty of research saying that seatbelts save lives. I have to call bullshit on that. Because I've been in several accidents, upward around 20, 25. None of them I've ever worn a seatbelt. And none of them I have ever gotten hurt. And yet, every person in the car that was wearing a seatbelt had broken bones from the seatbelt, concussions, whiplash injuries, or in 2 cases, death. So, I do not believe in seatbelts. When I tell the judge this, and tell him that I'm not going to pay any fine that he imposes on me, odds are very good that the judge, because this has happened before, odds are very good that the judge will just say, so, who are you to defy the law? And I answer him, would you agree with me that the Constitution of the United States, in fact, is the law of the land? Yes. Invariably, he has to say. Then show me any article, phrase, or section in the Constitution of the United States that says that the government has a right to dictate whether or not I live or die as a law-abiding citizen who has not committed any capital crimes. Checkmate. Because there is none. I walk out. The bailiff tries to stop me. And the judge goes, no, bailiff. Let him go. He's right. But I got a letter in the mail from the judge's office saying that he wanted to see me in his chambers the next week. So I sat down with him without a lawyer. And he goes, that was an interesting defense. Where'd you come up with it? Well, isn't the very argument of a seatbelt that it saves lives? Yeah. And researchers back that up, right? Yeah. Well, I've done my own research. And I know for a fact they don't. But I also know that these belts were lobbied in. Auto manufacturers put them in specifically so they could raise the prices on the cars at the time. And when the government decided that it was a good idea, they continued to raise the prices of the car. Because now it was government mandated. Everybody had to have a seatbelt. The judge goes, can you email me that research? Yeah. Next thing I know, we're having coffee every Wednesday up until he retired and moved to Arizona. And we're talking about this. And he brings up lawsuits against all the American auto manufacturers and each state legislature. Because he agreed with my findings. You don't change the law by protesting. You change the law by research. You change the law by proving that the alternative is a better idea. Seatbelts do not save lives. They never have and they never will. Safe driving saves lives. Okay? Here's an example. Now, this is an extreme example, and there's only a couple situations that this example would even apply. But I think it would make sense for the people that are listening to this podcast. A lot of companies enforce the OSHA mandate that the forklift driver wears a seatbelt. And the forklift companies have even made it so newer forklifts will not start unless you put on your seatbelt. Okay. Here's a scenario. Driver's unloading a truck. Driver sees that the next pallet is extremely flammable and could explode. Driver reads the content label of the pallet and sees that it's nitroglycerin. If he moves too fast or hits an air bubble or hits a bump and creates an air bubble, the pallet will go up. If the pallet went up and an explosion that would take out not only the entire warehouse, but 3 blocks in a 3-block radius, do you really think that the seatbelt would save his life? Of course not. Seatbelts don't save lives. Safe driving saves lives. Anyway, I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. My wife and I hung out and watched movies, and in the morning I started a new job. I'm proud of the fact that I still have a job. But it was a learning experience. It was definitely a learning experience. When Argyle Gardens actually starts getting their stuff together and starts making sure that the people who live there follow the rules, then it might be a good place to work. But part of the problem in the security industry is security isn't a bunch of cameras if the cameras aren't manned 24/7. Security isn't a guard that's there to observe and report, but nothing is acted on when you report it. Like the seatbelt, you can't expect miracles when the force of the explosion is going to fold a forklift. Of course the driver's going to die. Seatbelt's not going to be some magical talisman that keeps them safe. The security industry is the same way. If you have rules, you have to enforce them. Part of the problem with Argyle Gardens is people want security there so they feel safe, but they refuse to close their doors and latch them so strangers don't come through. They invite people that they don't know to stay with them in exchange for drugs. These people that they're inviting in are starting fires, are stealing, are all around a liability for the property and the residents and the property management. Until you actually enforce the rules, that's not going to change. Here's another analogy, and people tend to grab this one a little bit better than the forklift analogy. Let's say using a condom has a failure rate of 0.1%, or do the math easy, of 1%. A failure rate of 1% out of 100. Okay. Now, if you and your girlfriend are doing it with the same brand of condom 100 times, somewhere in that 100 times, you probably need to get a pregnancy test. Because it failed. There are no magical talismans to keep you safe. Okay? It's not the government's job to take guns away from the people whose job it is to protect themselves from the government. But those regulations are there specifically to protect the government from the people that want want to change the government. You might want to think about this kind of stuff, because that's really what we're looking at with a new president in office, one with a proven track record, that has been tough on the border, really good for the economy, and has a extremely good chance of being killed while he's in office. Why do I say that? Well, they've already attempted twice that we know of. And he was just running for president. Now he is president. Okay? They've cheated him out of the 2020 election. To keep him out, they put in the most incompetent man in Congress. A man that had run several times for presidency, had been in office for 50 years, and never done anything to actually further the American agenda. Yet he made a lot of money. He was good for the deep state. Trump wasn't. If we're going to have rules, if we're going to have laws, we have to enforce them from the ground up. And we can't pick and choose. Joe Biden has been said to be pardoning all these people, his son included. Pfizer, which is a company, not an individual, which isn't even constitutional. Anthony Fauci and people are seeing it. But there are some things that people need to realize about the presidential pardon. There are limitations. And the limitations are actually in the very wording of Article 2, Section 1. Okay? In the case of Hunter Biden, the government wasn't involved in his criminal trials. The federal government wasn't involved. So there was nothing to pardon. The convictions still stick, and it really doesn't matter what Daddy says. As for Pfizer, Moderna, and the others that might have been involved in the COVID scams. The blanket pardons for a company is not only unheard of, it goes against everything that America was founded on. This is getting into absolute fascism. But the conservatives are the fascists. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed your Christmas. We did. I'm Anatoliana Chalisva. This is Patriots Must Rise. Please, live free, die well, and love your neighbor as Christ loved you. About this time, up here we have a QR code that leads to a gateway to donate or completely crowdfunded. I hope you do. Subscribe, donate, like, comment, make fun of everything that I say. By all means, please do. Anyway, just have fun with it. Until next time.